here's an example of this particular type of thing. And it's been exposed on a site here that's called NoOneNeedsToDieTomorrow.com. And I'll put this link up too at the end of the show. It says here, British NGO forecasts 5 Brave New World scenarios set in 2030. This British NGO is quite interesting. This is by Amy de Miseli on the 13th of October 2008. It says the mainstream media is reporting on what the world will be like in 22 years based on a fictitious account made up by a non-governmental organization known as Forum for the Future. You can look into this Forum for the Future. It's a very interesting site. Look at who's funding it. The big corporations, the military-industrial complex, in fact, are funding them. And governments, too. They also have a part there, if you look into all the links and what they're all about and so on, called Masterclass. Masterclass. You know, the natural elite who have the right to rule your lives, they're called, they'll all be part of the Masterclass. They've got a Masterclass card. But it says here, the self-proclaimed charity committed to sustainable development, again a Rockefeller ideal, working on behalf of big business. The 76-page report titled Climate Futures, a Response to Climate Change in 2030 was created in collaboration with the Hewlett-Packard Labs. They outline the possible scenarios, 5 possible scenarios of what type of brave new world hell we could be living in by the year 2030. Efficiency first, service transformation, redefining progress, environmental war economy, and protectionist world. Each one has its own timeline, a make-believe history with wide array of things that may occur between 2009 and 2030 if we don't start making global warming our number one priority. They include artificially grown flesh to feed hundreds of millions. That's kind of like Soylent Green, isn't it? Cars run on batteries. That stuff was talked about in the 50s. Microwave weapons deterring hurricanes. They've got all that stuff now. A supercomputer named ALF 8 against ALF 8 making predictions. A global, so they'll have their own form of oracle, you see. These characters have always been into various things like channeling and horoscopes and all this kind of stuff down through the centuries if you follow the lineages. It says a global recession and global taxes. Well, we've got that already. And bionic games in California. The middle class is destroyed all over the world. Well, that's what they're doing, isn't it? Water shortages, food shortages, they're created too. Starvation, the rise of India and China, the fall of America, Russia freezing out Europe, and virtual Olympics. We have most of this stuff already. A suicide epidemic in the U.S. because of an economic depression. It's funny that, because I was just looking at a site, it's a company, it's in Bretton, it's also in Australia, it's international, it's called Exit International, being given the go-ahead to preach this doctrine of death for those who want out of this life, if it becomes too hellish, which it's going to get because it's designed to become that way. It says here, famine in Southeast Asia, $400 a barrel oil, heat wave in Europe kills 200,000, and denying climate change is a thought crime, and conviction gets you deported to an international convict settlement. It's almost there already, isn't it? In fact, it will be because if you don't go along with climate change and pay your carbon taxes, you'll be a criminal, you see. And all the little children that are utterly brainwashed, again, by the big NGOs that sit and make up the curriculum for children. They're indoctrinations. They're raising up an army of little Nazis. The perfect Nazis. Even Germany never had this kind of perfection in scientific indoctrination. This has been done today. This is a very brave new world indeed. The press describes climate futures as sketches of social consequences from today's global warming crisis that are based on studies and consultations with climate change specialists. Do you know, if you look into the whole thing about global warming, it's all, and then I'm talking about the UN group, is all funded to do this. All the scientists that get their paychecks for preaching this doctrine, so not all believe in it, right? Or you don't get a paycheck. You find that it's based on one paper, one main paper written by a scientist, and the whole doctrine is based on that. The whole doctrine. It's astonishing. But then again, it's not really, since they have to find a method to get people into a war mode, a war on something. In a global society, you've got to find new enemies. So man himself is the enemy, according to the Club of Rome, a big think tank and NGO. It is a very brave new world indeed. It says, NATO is ready to go to war if necessary to enforce the 2020 Beijing Climate Change Agreement, and water shortages have already forced abandonment of Central Australia and Oklahoma. Booming megacities are only just managing to cope, and fuel poverty is a huge problem. After a decade-long global depression, following the 2008 crash, governments give a tight regulatory hand on the economy, encourage citizens to put greater priority on quality of life rather than making money. Back in a moment after this break.